the beginning of our show, there's always some random part of the conversation that we kick off with, and Judd will, to his credit, will never let us not record it. I mean, it's like,
I think it makes the show.
Welcome to GTM Unfiltered, hosted by GTM veterans Judd Borko, Craig Rosenberg, and Matt Amundsen. We make talking business fun and sometimes funny. That's because we're always unscripted, unfiltered, and unlike anything else out there. Get ready.
So let's start with Matt's shirt. Come on.
yeah, I mean, Matt, you know, your profile picture in Zoom, I just wanted to know, is your shirt buttoned up to the neck?
No.
Are you sure?
I was wondering if you were hanging out with the homies. Just wondering.
Listen, I'm not above that look, and I grew up in Southern California, so it works for me from time to time. But let me stop video here. There's a break there. That button's unbuttoned.
Okay.
Maybe it's because it's such a little tiny picture.
It's a teeny picture. Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Rosetta, what do you think? Was that buttoned up? Is he lying to us?
Whatever it is, I think it's a great style.
Thank you.
There it is.
Thank you. Yeah. Plus,
Matt, he's in PR, man. He could, you know.
I used to be in PR, Craig.
That's right. You used to.
So you're telling us you can spin anything?
Yeah, that's right, man. My favorite story about Matt is, I don't know, we were like at like he had chosen some incredible Italian restaurant. We're there, and he's got a guy there. He's like, "This is Craig Rosenberg. He was our first client at N6." I'm like, "What?" So like this kid was just, I mean, like his PR agency, man, you built that thing off your back, man. It was like the most impressive thing. And we thought this guy was the greatest, and we were right. And like, I remember like I introduced you to someone, and like, she's like, "God, I got the reference." And the reference said, "These guys will walk on fire for you." Like, that was true. And it was like, you were so pro, man, that I didn't even know that you had just started building the thing. And that was the beginning of our relationship. I've worked with Matt in his previous role as a firewalking PR person.
Now he gets people to walk on fire for him.
Yeah, multiple times. So you built N6 agency from the ground up, made it to the point where it was a big top PR agency. Did that for what, 10 years?
Yeah.
Rolled into a holding company. I don't know if the order's correct yet, but I remember meeting with Matt. He's like, "Craig, I'm the CEO of a holding company now." So he did so well. He's buying, he's acquiring, putting a variety of different companies under his holding company. But the best part is, and Matt cannot wait to talk to you about this, is this guy buys a soccer team in Italy, okay, and turns that thing around, which I know everyone wants to talk about. Now, here's the thing. I always thought you owned one. Did you do two? I was looking in the bio. Do you have two Italian soccer teams?
Yeah, we have four teams total under the portfolio now.
No, you have a US one too, right? MLS?
Yeah. We spent like 2 years trying to get professional soccer to Brooklyn, which was just a crazy. Craig was a part of that too. I was kind of feeding you some of the drama behind the scenes. That was a wild process. But yeah, finally, about 3 months ago, we closed that deal, and our expansion year is 2025.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So we're pumped.
So it's funny, when we were putting this together, Matt, I told everyone about you. They're like, because we want to diversify who we talk to and the stories that we hear. So like, I know the guys have been excited to talk to you, and we had to figure out. Judd called me like 40 minutes ago. He's like, "Well, what part of these amazing parts of his background should we talk about?" Right?
We started N6A, 14 years ago now. Started out in my basement. Spent 10 years as the founder and CEO. Scaled a nice business. Got us through COVID, and then I was just kind of not that I was bored, but I was ready. I was just ready for another challenge. We had built a really good network. The business obviously was generating, positive cash for a while, and we could afford to take a little bit of a risk. And I started, making these crazy investments and leveraging the agency, which was a built-in promotional vehicle. And we started investing in these other businesses, and there were businesses that really just kind of satisfied my curious, crazy mind. So we did soccer, we did wine, we did media. And now it's 4 years into the holding company. We have eight businesses under the portfolio, all our media, marketing, and entertainment and sports.
You had me at wine and soccer. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm going to just go hang out with this guy. I don't care about those podcasts. So whatever.
Matt, do you want to do the Mark Consuelos soccer team first?
Sure. So when we took over the Consuelos, the team with Consuelos and Kelly Ripa, we actually bought the team basically out of administration, and we had 8 days before the season started. And we had no players, no coach, no GM. There was mushrooms growing out of the field, our stadium. It was crazy. And we wound up winning the championship in our first year. But that was a crazy, crazy time. Or we could do Brooklyn was wild too, because Brooklyn, like, I was out of that deal like a dozen times, because you're dealing with New York City bureaucracy and politics and lobbyist firms. And like, I'm just like, I just had no patience for a lot of the nonsense that we dealt with, but I was so determined just to get that thing closed because we had a big vision to bring, pro soccer to Brooklyn. But there was a ton of adversity with that one. So we could do either one of those two.
Matt Amundsen, what do you think?
Yeah, so Craig going, oh yeah, Matt bought a soccer team with Kelly Ripa's husband, and I keep going, come on, man, that's Mark Consuelos, dude. Like, I understand that he's married to a very famous person who has a very famous morning show, but like he's a guy all to himself, and one that I think most of us would gladly wake up tomorrow morning and be that guy. So let's properly name this dude. I think given the fact that between the popularity of shows like Ted Lasso and the Wrexham show, like, this story is incredible. And the fact that you acquired the business when you acquired it in the state that you acquired it, and then had the results that you had, is something it's pretty magical. So I mean, I'd love for us to dive deeper into that, because I think the broad-based business application of something like that is, there's been plenty of times where folks like the three of us have moved into a business to either up-level it or solve problems and take something that may be on the downslope, or maybe something that feels nearly insolvent, and turn it into something that's very successful. So I think that for a core part of our audience, they'd be very curious into what your methodology was, both from like a tactical perspective, but I'm guessing just, because I have a sports background as well, also from a sort of a mental and coaching perspective.
Sure.
Well, I got one starting question. So from a business perspective, what was the most challenging part going from, like, I mean, you probably watched soccer, played soccer, but like getting into that business, like, what was the biggest shock, like, from a business perspective that you had?
Well, frankly, when you deal with European clubs in Italy, a lot is the bureaucracy. There's borderline corruption, in some cases that you deal with that are really just generally accepted in Europe. But to us as American entrepreneurs and owners, like, they're totally foreign concepts. So it took us a minute to really adjust to that. I think, we made a lot of mistakes, but I think one of the smart things we did was the first deal we did with European soccer, we came in as a minority investor. So there was already an operating team we were backing. Like, we would have been we heard all these horror stories about these American investors who at the time invested in European clubs and just had like horrible experiences. Yeah. And most of them, the one common theme was that most of them just bit off more than they could chew. Like, sure. They had, like Mike Piazza, who's actually become a good friend of mine. Mike Piazza went into Italy and was totally taken advantage of. Like, and he didn't have the, he's the greatest guy in the world, but he didn't have the experience or the network to run a European soccer club. So that I was like, shit, like, let me just chill out here and kind of take a minute to learn, to build a network, to understand, how the inner workings of these clubs work. And I did a year or two of just really learning. And then fast forward to last year, then when we bought the club, we bought 100% of the club with Mark and Kelly and with some of our other co-owners, and we operated it. So I felt like we were kind of already through we were battle tested at that point.
Okay, so now that you're there, though, so you bought the club, no players, no coaches, mushrooms growing on the field. You had 8 days till the season started, and then you I mean, tell us that. I mean, that's
Better than Ted Lasso.
that's nuts.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll give you the whole context. You need the backstory too, Craig. So what happened was, it's 2020. I'm like, I built this PR firm, and we had a great management team. The business was sort of running itself, and I felt like at that stage in my career, I could start to take a little bit more risk. And I wanted to I didn't want to mess around with businesses I wasn't passionate about. I felt like if I was passionate about a business, the business, it was more likely to succeed. And frankly, even if it failed, I was like, at least I'll have a hell of a, fun time doing it.
Yeah.
So we get into Italian football. That's what brings us to Italian soccer. It was one of my lifelong dreams, to invest in an Italian football club. Grew up watching Italian football with my grandfather sitting on his lap, espresso in the kitchen. Like, this was my childhood.
Yeah.
So we invest in this club called Campobasso. This is in 2020, right in the height of COVID. All the stadiums were shut down, so there was no revenue from tickets. I felt like there was just so much negativity and so much pain and suffering. Like, I wanted to do something that galvanized people, and for me, it was cool. So we buy this team, Campobasso, and the team had like the worst luck. It was like this hidden jewel where if it just had proper management and ownership, I felt like it was just ready to take off. It was nestled right between Rome and Naples, 25,000 seat stadium, couple million people from that region who lived in North America, which played right into our, hands in terms of our skill set and expertise. So we wind up investing in this club. And the first year we invest in the club, we're a minority owner, and the club gets promoted. Okay. And it's the first time in 32 years the club got promoted.
Yeah.
And it was like the coolest experience of my life. Like, this was all happening during COVID. It was like, we literally brought so much hope and pride and joy to this region because of the promotion. The soccer team really is the identity of the region. So that's 2020, and we're minority owners at the time. 2021, then the next year, first year, the team is playing in the next tier up, which is the third tier of Italian football. We started to have some issues with the majority owner, who was basically corrupt. The majority owner was basically corrupt. That's kind of the easiest way for me to explain it. And they wound up reneging on an option we had to take the majority out. It was basically that whole year, the following year, was complete drama and nonsense. And like, it was actually painful because, we really invested because we were passionate about it, and we believed in the project. And then the following year, it just turned into just this ugly kind of mess with us fighting with the majority owner. And then what happens a year later, after the following season, everything that I sort of perceived to be the case came true. And because of some administrative non-compliance issues, the club wound up getting relegated or put into administration, essentially. And it was because of mistakes that the majority owner made. And the Italian Federation said, basically, you're no longer eligible to play professional soccer. So you have to restart from the fifth tier, which is like purgatory. It's like a death sentence. And we had established a really good rapport with the federation, and they were sort of encouraging us to take over the club. But they were like, look, if you take over the club, you got to restart all the way from the bottom. It's basically an amateur league. So think about like the highs and the lows. You go from getting promoted for the first time in 32 years to a top professional league, millions of dollars of revenue, to overnight basically being an amateur club. And nobody really had the cojones, to go buy the club. And I was like, you know what, like, screw it, let's go do this. And we own 100% of it. It's a good story. It's all ours. We don't have to worry about sharing it with any, knucklehead co-owners. And the challenge was that we had 8 days to do it. We bought the club on September 11th. Our first game was September 20th. There was no coach, no players. There was no CEO to run the club. We had mushrooms growing out of the field because it was totally left abandoned by the old ownership group. And then on top of it, because you're dealing with Europe where it's pro-rel, promotion and relegation.
Yeah.
You got to try to win the league. So it's not like we're just trying to put a team like to show up every Sunday and just, be a mid-table team. We needed to win the league. So we needed to put an elite team together basically on 8 days notice. And obviously it worked out well, but like, looking back at it, that was a pretty, crazy move. And a lot of things could have went wrong, but thankfully just everything, the soccer gods were, and I think the business gods were on our side too all year.
Yeah, I mean, based on a story like that, everything should have gone wrong. It's
Yeah.
amazing to be in that state. I mean, sometimes I think about like how stressed out I am leading up to a trade show, and you're talking about, a multi-million-dollar investment, multi-million-dollar business opportunity, and you got to get a product on the field in an 8-day period. That's unbelievable. Can you talk us through a little bit of like, where do you start in that situation? Do you go look for a CEO first, a coach first, the players? Like, how does that all come together in such a short period of time?
And one caveat to that, like, how do you feel like your business experience helped you figure that out?
Yeah.
Well, Judd, on that question, look, I love Italy. Craig knows this. Craig and I used to hang out all the time in Soho, Italian restaurants, wine, the whole thing. No one loves like the motherland more than I do. But if you come in with, in a humble way, you don't want any kind of hubris to take over. But if you come in with a real discipline, westernized entrepreneurial mindset, those clubs in many cases are so mismanaged that can be an opportunity. If you really, so I just tried to bring the very, modest amount of business and management and innovation experience I had, running a company in the United States, to an Italian team that had basically just been screwed time and time again by people that just didn't have the best interests of the club. They didn't know how to build internal culture. They were probably, they were overly selfish with distributions and making, wrong decisions on reinvesting in the club. And I just tried to apply, what worked for me in my primary line of business, which for the prior 10 years or 12 years had been, marketing and PR. And thankfully it worked out. And I tried to do it in a way where I also wanted to learn. I didn't want to just come in and be this, a lot of times I see these American owners as these ATM machines. You just come in and you're just good for money. I don't want, I really wanted to be more than, a financial backer of the club. I wanted to be a positive steward for the community. We wanted to contribute and be accretive to the community in ways that others weren't. There was about 1 million. This is actually the poorest region in Italy we invested in. So that was really meaningful to me. It's where my grandparents came from. So it really hit home. And there's about 300,000 people that live in this region. It's called Molise in Italy. There's 1.2 million people from Molise who live in North America. So like that was where our market was. Like our bread was, let's attack North America. Like these are people that have been successful in business, but everyone shares a common pride to their homeland and to their birthplace. And we really tried to bring those people into the project as sponsors, investors, and that helped tremendously. We wanted to build a global project and really help these people in Italy dream beyond their surroundings, which historically was very provincial. And Matt, I missed your question. What was your question?
Well, great answer, by the way. My question was much more on the tactical side in terms of no team, no owner, no CEO. How do you start slotting those people into the organization? What was your strategy for building back what was basically an empty cabinet?
Well, that's where I was saying before, that's where I think our experience as a minority owner helped us. Like, sure. Craig, like you'll appreciate this. We were a minority owner for 2 or 3 years, and I woke up every day and like my family, they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're pouring money into like, and when are you going to get liquidity out of this? And this was, by the way, during COVID, when the markets were just like defying all freaking logic. And I'm going into some soccer team where basically, you're constantly investing, you're investing and we didn't have operating control. So that was maddening to me. But, Matt, to answer your question, that all paid off when we took over the club last year, because then it was like, I realized that all those investments were really just learning lessons. And we had built a network. We had a good intuition. We knew, how the P&L worked. We knew how player trading worked. And we were able to assemble a team. Obviously, you're still taking a ton of risk. You don't know what the hell, your best player could go down the first week and the season is over for you. So you're still inheriting a ton of risk. But a lot of that risk, I think, I don't want to say it was mitigated, but we were comfortable with the risk because we had the network, we had the relationships, We knew how these businesses worked at that point. So we were like, you know what? If this thing, we knew what the worst case is. And that really, the one thing I've learned as we've moved to this more diversified model of ours is you just want to go right to what is the worst case?
Yeah.
What does the worst case look like? What is the downside risk? And then if you can live with that, that's when you can make smart decisions. And then you focus on, let's build to get to the upside.
Yeah.
By the way,
First hire.
Matt, I was thinking,
Hire.
I was thinking about you when he was talking about the how you guys made that. It seems like a killer targeting decision to build a community around the folks in North America from the region. Like that's the kind of thinking that had to come from your years of being in marketing and PR. I mean, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, Craig. So two things on that. Number one, all these American investors and private equity firms that are pouring money into European soccer, especially in Italy, they're all going to the north. Milan, Florence, Venice, all the sexy cities,
Right.
And where all the money is. And I wanted to do the opposite, and people thought I was crazy. And, I probably am crazy, but the way I looked at it was there's very, very limited market share domestically, because you're, in Southern Italy, you're dealing with a lot of poverty, you're dealing with underdeveloped infrastructure. So people are like, why are you investing in this club? And then I just pointed to the expat base. And I said, that's why I'm investing in it, because this region has 1.2 million expats that are in North America. These are the ones that have the money and have built the companies, and want to give back. And as crazy as it sounds, you don't meet a lot of expats from Florence and from Venice that live in New York. You meet the expats that are from Sicily and Calabria and Naples, and that's what our strategy was concentrated on. So to me, it was, and that played right into our hands. Obviously, being a marketing firm, the relationships we had in North America with sponsors, with media, it just played perfectly into our hands.
But what did you do? I'm very curious on this, right? This is brilliant. I think there's a broader lesson for any business in terms of targeting and thinking about, who to build a community around. But what'd you do with the 1.2? Did you reach out to them and start to market to them? Sounds like you got some to be sponsors, some to be investors. What were the plays you ran there?
Well, once Kelly and Mark decided to join the project, we started getting a lot of inbounds, so that was helpful. Before that, it was the first thing we did is we established partnerships with all the community organizations. So there's about, out of the 1.2 million expats, 400,000 of them. First off, the Italian American population is massive. It's 17 million people. It's a highly affluent community. A lot of them are second and third and fourth generation now. So they've been educated here, they've made money here, but they all share a common bond and pride, of their homeland. So we were really looking to address the broader Italian American community, and the club. These clubs are incredible platforms for storytelling. Look at what Ryan and Rob did in Wrexham. It's like just an incredible. These are the best media platforms you could possibly have, because there's history behind the clubs, there's tourism, there's culture, there's politics, there's drama, there's sports, there's so many of these things rolled up into these European clubs. So we really wanted our club to represent the Italian American story, which is a story of underdogs and immigrants and people. And that's something that I felt all of the 17 million Italian Americans could identify with. And then at the bare minimum, we knew the 1.2 million who happened to come from this specific place could certainly identify with it. So we were much more targeted with them in terms of newsletters, establishing relationships with community event organizations. We did watch parties from, Montreal, Toronto, Philly, Boston, some of the more densely populated locations and that sort of thing. And then when Mark and Kelly joined, it just took everything obviously to another level.
That's incredible, man.
Hey,
Does that satisfy your business part of that? That is.
I'm going to take a little bit of a right turn, because I think we can probably talk soccer all day long, and I'm actually sure we can. But I want to kind of take this back to you come from PR and marketing, US based. And one of the things that my experience has been is there's a very different mentality when you talk about PR and marketing between US and Europe. What was your experience
Huh.
there, right? Like the differences you ran into. And do you think that it kind of your experience in the US, having built marketing teams, PR, and really understanding how we do things, and I'm going to say I think we do it better. I'm on record, so it goes. That helped you to be successful with the team and other people like Ryan and so on. Do you think that US experience actually has really helped in that area to kind of get everybody around, get the team going, build that momentum?
Totally. I mean, the first thing which was strikingly surprising to me, Judd, was in the US, you can sort of sizzle first as a brand and you could stake second. You know what I mean? Like you can really make your brand, your brand perception can be amazing. And then your product can kind of be like the second. Now, if your product isn't good, obviously that's not going to be a good recipe, but you can kind of sell your brand first based on perception alone. In our experience in Europe, it's the opposite. Like there's a I don't want to say dubious, but people are a little bit, especially coming in as foreigners, they're skeptical first. So their default is let these guys show me through their product that this thing is worth my time and my money and my energy. And then when it is, then they buy into the marketing hype. So for me, that was a big thing to adjust to, because we were like, let's go into Italy and let's crank marketing. Like, let's get the marketing machine cranking. And these people who have never had a club that's like, been relevant from a marketing perspective are going to, love us. And that was actually not our experience domestically. It was our experience in North America. Like the people in North America were like, oh my God, my hometown team. Like I've never heard that they have a team and they're doing all these great things here. So they loved it. But the Italians were very skeptical. We had to win first. We had to show them that we were there to win and we were competent and we were good operators. And then once we won their trust, now they're like, they call us Hollywood and Broadway, and they love the whole marketing machine behind it now. But it wasn't that way at first. The other thing I noticed that was interesting was in Italy, they actually don't, and I think this is true throughout Europe. They believe the product sort of stands alone. Like if you look at Italian products, it's craftsmanship, it's artistry, it's Ferrari, Lamborghini, and they feel sometimes not that marketing is below them, but they feel like the product is the marketing, right? So that was something that I had to adjust to, because we were used to representing clients. Craig's company was great because he had the best product, as he knows.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients, man, they came to us and their product were like, shit, like how are we gonna market this thing? The product is like, it's pre-revenue, it's alpha, it's beta, like there's a million competitors. How are we going to market this thing? In Italy, it's sort of the opposite, where they feel like they spend so much time perfecting the product, almost to the extent of complete and utter, insanity in some cases. And they feel like that the best marketing strategy is the product first.
One of your take though. Do you believe? I want to know if he believes that, and I want to know from you two also.
I think my opinion is I've kind of become very balanced now, Judd. I probably went into European soccer maybe with a little bit too much of an American, marketing business mindset, and I think I've probably come out of it. I don't want to be like them. Maybe I don't want to be like us. So I think I'm kind of netted out somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. But one thing that is true is that the North American soccer gods came to you, that the European football clubs come to you for advice. Like, what else did you bring to the table that the greater soccer community didn't have it sounds like from a marketing, merchandising, product? I mean, like, you tell me, but like, what was it that wasn't there that you guys brought to the table?
Well, Craig, by the way, it absolutely boggles my mind that, like, I mean, you're talking to someone who 4 years ago was just a soccer fan, and I loved soccer. I loved my grandparents. I loved like Italy, and I had not the slightest clue, how the inner workings of a soccer club look like. And then 4 years later, we have global deal flow. Like people are calling me, asking, like, I'm like, how did this, it totally blows my mind.
It is an amazing story. I mean,
so I still have a tough time kind of convincing myself I know anything about running a soccer club, but I guess I guess we kind of do know a little bit. But you know, your question, I think, look, these clubs are, here's the deal. I don't know how closely you follow soccer, but England did an incredible job. If you look at, like, go back to the 90s, like as a quick history lesson, you go back to the 90s, Italian football was the product. You had AC Milan, you had Maradona with Napoli, you had, I mean, Juventus was winning every year. I grew up and you couldn't even find a Premier League game on TV if you looked all weekend for one. And then all that changed in like the late 90s, early 2000s. That basically flipped, where the Premier League became the IT league. And it was because they were way ahead of everyone when it came to embracing social media, content. They understood how to leverage TV rights. And Italy, again, I think it was a little bit of their lack of marketing, mindset. They were like, look, we have the best product in the world and we don't need to invest in marketing. And that ended really badly, really quickly. Like just in the span of 5 years, Italian clubs went from the best in the world to having a significant backseat to the Premier League, where you couldn't even get into the Premier League if, you're under $1 billion at a certain point, right? So I think that was one thing we learned was, for me, I saw that as an opportunity. Because you go into England and unless you have like a Wrexham-like differentiator, which really are few and far between, you're entering a super saturated market, incredible competition, price restrictions. I mean, just the English market, for all the upside it has, it's so restrictive in many ways at this point, because it's basically become a fifth professional sports league in North America. Right. Yeah. And so in Italy, I felt like it's an opportunity because these clubs are just not embracing marketing and they're not tapping into their addressable market in North America. And they have an enormous addressable market in North America, but none of them were just prioritizing it. So for me, it was a very natural complement, I think, to our core business and our skill set. And had I went to England, first of all, I wouldn't have the money to do it. But even if I did go to England, I just don't think we would have been as successful.
Yeah. By the way, Amundsen, the other Matt, I guarantee, was online trying to buy a football team just now.
Hell yeah.
American football
on mobile, but yeah.
So hey, Matt, Craig, I'd love to hear your take on how you guys would approach a football team, and get Matt here to give us the because I feel like being business people, we feel like we can kind of go after almost any business, but it sounds like this might be a bit of an anomaly. Like the way they do things is very different than the way we think.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm listening to Matt's story, what I'm hearing is he completely understands the market there and also understands a market that exists on this side of the Atlantic. And it would have been very easy to just be like, hey guys, I now own this team. So an Italian American, just like yourselves, owns a club over there. Let's all rally around that. I think the distinction that he made in the promotion, or the way he's spoken about it very briefly here, and I'm sure there's way more to it than what he's just told us today, but is actually having a narrative. And I think this goes to show, just like a brand requires a narrative, not just that it exists, not just that it has a product. And I think that's probably, to his point, truer here in the States than it is in Europe, and even in places like APAC. To tell the story of why you should care, not just that it's there and it's good and it's your heritage and all that, but like, hey, this is a story of a club that's working class and is rising up the ranks, just the way that you have as Italian Americans or Italian Canadians. That to me is like, this feels like the spark that probably lit the fuse there. Not just that, hey, this American entrepreneur has made good and gone back to the home country and is making his grandparents and great grandparents proud of their legacy, but that this is a legacy for everybody in this community.
Yeah. That I would actually say that I would talk about the things I would never have thought of, like the target market, that what we've been talking about this whole time. The North American play was brilliant and incredible. Brilliant. I just, if you take like a B2B perspective, we want to lock horns and frankly, what I'm sort of thinking about right now is the obvious target market or ideal customer profile. Like, it would have been, like you said, like most people say, well, you go in and you're going to get after the local fans, right? And instead you found this, you had this great idea for frankly target market expansion. And then so the newsletters make sense. You guys went guerrilla, right? You went to the community groups, the watch parties, those things, those brilliant sort of, I don't even know if that's guerrilla, but it is, you know what I mean? Like a newsletter has scale in it. Like what you guys did was like, you got your hands dirty and sort of building the marketing around this. I think that's, I'm not sure I would have thought of that. The other, and then what I love is like you made this play, you built this sort of this community, right? So everyone's talking about community. You built the community. Well, I think we can all learn from a lot of the elements that you did there. And in a weird way, you brought the community back to the home base, right? Like, and then that gave you a sort of leverageable asset.
Yeah,
that went along with the soccer team. I think it's brilliant. Actually, the one thing I think about is, do we feel like merchandising, like the UK clubs or Premier League clubs are clearly really good. I can't go anywhere without seeing
That's true.
Chelsea jersey.
Yeah.
Chelsea's my team. And then but Man U, all these things. But like what has merchandising been part of the play and with the North American community? And
well, it is now. A year ago, we just like September 11th buy the team, September 20th got to play. It was like we're drinking from a fire hose the whole season. I mean, and by the way, I wasn't exaggerating. We really had mushrooms growing on our field. It was abandoned. It was a 25,000 seats. Like imagine going to the Los Angeles Coliseum, and it had being abandoned for like 6 months. And the grass was like a foot high. There's mushrooms growing. It was wild. So on the merchandising side, we basically just had to take whatever we could get. So we went with some local merchandising provider. Now we got an Adidas deal, which is a global deal, global distribution. Adidas called us 6 months later when they heard about the project, and they were like, we want to back this. So now for the first time ever, we have a global, and the people in Campobasso, which is the name of the team in Italy, like they think they're like still living in a dream. It's a dream world. Like Adidas is here. We sold there's 14 clubs in Italy that have a stadium sponsor, and we're one of the 14. We sold a stadium sponsor. It happened to be to one of the largest real estate companies based in Canada. The CEO of the company happened to be one of the 1.2 million, Craig.
amazing.
Man, you went to, this like, oh my word.
Such a great business story. Like,
I'll tell you, the hardest thing for me when it comes to deal flow, you just talk about relating it to like our other kind of business interests as a group. It's so much easier to diligence other deals. Soccer deals are very hard to do diligence because the real diligence happens below the hood, beneath the hood. Like it's not the financials. The financials, this is the P&L, this is what the club is churning in profit. This is what the club's losing. This is the debt position. Those things are pretty basic, but what really makes or breaks the deal is like the stuff that you have to go live in the country to see. So the political leanings of the fans, the local mayor is, is he left leaning? Is he right leaning? What are their interests in the club? Like there's all of these things that, become incredibly challenging to navigate through unless you're there. And you get burned very easily. So you have to sort of live it for a few years, I think. I think it's pronounced in Italy and England. It's probably a little bit less pronounced, but places like Italy, France, France is very, I'm generalizing, but France is a country when it comes to soccer that's historically resistant to foreign ownership. So, if you're going to do a deal in France, you got to go there and win the trust of the fans and do the community events and kind of prove to them why you're the right group. Because if you don't, and I actually have some stories I could share with you of other groups, the fans have the power to shut your project down before it even gets off the ground. So those are all things that don't really manifest themselves into the very late stages of the diligence process. And a lot of groups don't even do it.
That's amazing.
And Amundsen, you can go online and buy a soccer team. I just found it.
Good. Yeah. Just drop it in the chat. Thank you.
Just for later.
I was thinking like a semi-pro football team or something like that. Because I remember Matt, by the way, when we were talking about, he's like, Craig, here's the thing about soccer teams. The price point for what you buy them for is what people will pay.
Yeah, it's supply and demand.
It's like amazing.
No,
So
I mean, look, I learned, actually, I got a good piece of advice 4 years ago. We got in sports as a business is a massive asset class. And it's
Sure.
one of the few asset classes where, you get, frankly, very rational, disciplined, successful business people to make very irrational decisions. And in some cases that doesn't end well. In other cases, you got to back the right people, just like in any other business, you got to back the right people. But it's a supply and demand play. It's based on scarcity. There's only so many assets available. It's like beachfront property. You can't build any more beachfront property. So if you're in the market to buy a beachfront house, you just got to deal with what, the market is.
yeah, that's amazing. So really quick on go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question because in the US, like, you get these new owners, whether in the NFL or whether in the NBA, and they typically get fleeced by the other owners, like right off the bat, right? Because they're looking to do something really splashy. You think about the Phoenix Suns picking up KD, they probably mortgage the future of that club through that trade. The Cavaliers, as they turned over ownership, was certainly guilty of this. So, was that on your mind as you stepped into full-blown ownership over the team? Like, hey, we got to make the right decisions. We got to make a splashy decision, but we got to make decisions that are good for us now and good for us, for the next 20 years of our ownership.
Totally, Matt. In fact, that's where promotion and relegation will scare the hell out of you. Like, we if we go out, we could have signed a lot of splashy, KD-like signings in Italy. But ultimately, when promotion, we needed to get promoted.
Yeah.
We needed to go up, right? So our mindset was, don't worry about, from a roster development perspective, don't worry about the splashy, sexy names. Let's just worry about winning the freaking league and building a good locker room dynamic and building culture. And, that was the number one priority. And we're I know we didn't really get into the Brooklyn project very much, but we're on the other end of that now in Brooklyn, where we're in a league that is trying to convince owners that are in a closed door franchise model, where their assets are incredibly safe and protected, to start giving that up and opening the doors to pro rel. And I'm actually a huge proponent of it. I even think it's worth the risk, and we're willing to put our money where our mouths are. But when you don't have promotion relegation risk, it does, you can operate a lot more freely when it comes to roster decisions and make splashy hires because there's no risk of going down.
Hey, what is the positive and negative of pro rel? So some of us get it, some don't. Like, how impactful is being relegated or promoted to the organization, even in a dollar kind of sense?
Look, Judd, I mean, if you're like a scrappy bootstrap, guy like me, you love it because you're looking for undervalued assets that have relatively low downside risk. That if you can bet on yourself, you can make that thing a 10, 20, 30x, right? You could also, and then you understand the downside risk. The thing could be worthless as well. Yeah. But the downside risk is worth it, and the upside is enormous. So for Campobasso, when we got in, we didn't pay very much for it, and our recent trade was about 10x what we paid in 18 months, and I think it's still undervalued. And that's the beauty of pro rel, right?
Would being relegated though, destroy your organization? Do you see it as hey, there's a cost associated with being relegated, and the positive, if we get the promotion, this value is kind of driven forward?
Well, look, I think it's all factored into the downside risk. For us, God forbid we got relegated, it would suck. We would be the asset. A lot of these, you got to remember, the European pyramid, the leagues are just moments in time. They're moments in time, and that's it. But it's the platform that you're betting on. So the platform, you have to believe that the platform will grow despite the ebbs and flows of being in, the Premier League or the Championship or League One or League Two or whatever it is. But there's a lot of stupid deals too. And, I can give you, for every good deal, I can give you dozens and dozens of stupid deals. And the stupidest deals are usually the biggest deals because they have very little upside They've very little upside, and they have enormous downside.
Yeah.
So, you could talk about Leeds United. You could talk about, I mean, a lot of the clubs in the Premier League right now, there's clubs in the Premier League that if they don't stay in the Premier League, the ownership groups, it will literally be impossible for them to get their money out of the clubs. And obviously we don't have the means to go buy a Premier League club, but even if we did, it's funny, a quick story. When we got into Campobasso for the first time, there was an American group. I have actually become very close with them that bought a team called Parma. I never heard of Parma. They were one storied team that won the UEFA Cup in the 90s. And they were in Serie A. They were about 10 games into the Serie A season. And like, it was a joke. Like everyone in Italy was like, whoever buys this club must be like, crazy, because it's like a slam dunk. They're going to get relegated. We were in the 4th tier at the time. So they're in the 1st tier. We're in the 4th tier. They bought Parma for about 120 million euros. And there was like a 98% chance of getting relegated. We bought Campobasso at the time for, it was like $2.5-3 million in the 4th tier, I think, when we first bought it, right? Wow. And then a year later, we go up to so we're in the 3rd. They go down, so they're in the 2nd. And it was like a great case study for me, because I said the only difference between us is 1 tier, right? Because now they're in B, we're in C, and $116 million in the purchase price. I mean, that's really really the difference. So that's how the game works sometimes.
Well, so your opinion, Lionel Messi, Inter Miami, good deal, bad deal?
Well, I think it's a great deal for American soccer. Like I think it's going to, like my father, for example, he's like a baseball guy. He doesn't know what a corner kick is. He just doesn't care about soccer. All of a sudden we sign, Messi becomes a player, and now he's buying the Apple subscription. He's reading soccer books. He's become really fascinated with the game. So I think in terms of the overall growth of the game of soccer, the sport of soccer in the United States, I think it was a great move. I don't think economically I think it's almost impossible to justify that deal economically. I mean, if you kind of get behind the math and the economics of the deal, I don't see how that's a good deal at all for the league. It's a great deal for Messi. And for us, it's great for us because we're on the periphery. We're on the periphery investing in American soccer, but not having skin in the game, where, there's capital calls and there's, the fans, obviously they want to see the product on the field, but behind the product, they don't see that, the consequences of that are, capital calls and a lot of other challenges economically that I think are going to take a long time to dig out of. But look, it was the right move. I think American soccer recognized ahead of the World Cup, they had to make a big splash. We talk to our people, like our network in Europe, all the time. They had zero respect for American soccer. The MLS, the MLS was completely irrelevant to anybody in Europe because there was no promotion and relegation. There's no, Champions League path. So I think by getting Messi, it was a signal that this is a real serious league. I frankly would like to see them invest more in youth. There was, Matt, I don't know how big of a soccer guy you are, but there was a record transfer fee this year paid by a kid. I forget his name. I went from Borussia Dortmund to Real Madrid, I think.
Okay.
They paid, I think it was 25 million euro transfer fee. And that was a record for an under 19 player, which was like, what is that? Like 1/10 of basically what Inter Miami paid Messi.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the US soccer teams invest in those kids, like invest in the future, where then I'll be really impressed. If you can go convince an 18-year-old kid who's worth $50 million on the transfer market because he's got his whole career ahead of him to come to the US and play his prime in the US, then I'll start to be impressed. Like Lionel Messi, for me, at 34, 35, 36 years old, he's an amazing player. I've seen him, dominate in the Champions League. I've seen him dominate in the World Cup. I have no interest, frankly, in watching him in the United States because I've already seen him. There's nothing he could do in the US that I haven't seen him already do in Europe. So I'd like to see us start to invest more in the highly valuable, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that could play another 18 years here.
Like the Nike Under Armour approach, right? Go after the youth. They're going to grow into what you want.
It's a foreign concept. I mean, look, as business guys, you'll appreciate, like, soccer is fascinating too because you own the assets. It's like real estate. The players are assets that you own. And, you go scoop up an 18-year-old kid and you put him on a minimum wage contract for 4 years, which teams can do that. That kid could be worth 20 million euros. And that's an asset that you own the asset. So I'd like to see the US kind of catch up on that side. I think Europe obviously is way ahead of us, but I think we're getting there.
So yeah, you know what? This is incredible. I'm not sure what to do because like we kept, like just the stories are endless here. It's amazing. And one thing that keeps coming out to me, it's what I've known about you, but I want the dudes on the call and the audience, like you basically, I think everyone's got the picture here. You go in and like you like to take something either from scratch or broken and build it up, so that you are a true entrepreneur. Like if you had to, from your experiences now across all your businesses, if you had like 2 or 3 things you would tell other entrepreneurs, what would you tell them? Like the secrets to your success?
Well, no, I think number one is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think you have to constantly be willing to pivot and to adjust. Craig, in my case, I've made so many mistakes, but we've gotten a couple things right, and the things we've gotten right have hit pretty big, all things considered. So I'm really proud of that. And if I didn't take the risks, I don't think, and also for me, it's about, waking up every morning, being passionate about something.
Yeah.
I always feel like the more I can, I put my heart and soul, back to when you were a client, I put my heart and soul into everything I do. So I just feel like, if I can put my heart and soul into something, it can be successful. And if I can't, I just feel like I'm not going to be able to optimize the value of the business or the asset as much as I would. And I usually pass on it. And that's the one thing I've learned. And even if we fail, we've had a couple failures too in the portfolio, and the failures have taught me a lot. And I'm happy I did them, because if I didn't do them, I would have been living the rest of my life thinking, what if? Why didn't I do that? And I don't like to live that way.
I got to say the best thing about this conversation, and thank you, Matt. We really appreciate you being here, man.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
One of the best things is this is that story of like, people think that you start in something and you're stuck, and I think you're proof positive of like, go for it. Just go for it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And you've had that success, and you've taken what you've learned more, parlayed it, moved it forward. And it's a cool story that I think anyone out there who's listening, like, you can do whatever you want if you decide, 1, you want to, and 2, you got the passion to put everything you got into it.
Thanks, Judd. Appreciate that.
By the way, Judd's a go for it guy too. I could tell, like when he's talking, he's like, I get this guy.
Dude, we're going to hang and drink wine.
But,
At a soccer game.
I think also, Craig, I think you need a formula too, or you need, I think, a set of operating principles. Like for us, we don't just go, we see so much deal flow in soccer. And by the way, just as a side note, soccer is by far the best networking investment we have ever made. Like just the amount of new people it's the global game. You're meeting global investors, business people, agents, sponsors. You're meeting so many people from across the world. You're learning about politics, cultures, language, travel, and there's no other investment I could think of that has that. But where I was going with that was, we really have a core set of values with these soccer clubs, and it doesn't make sense to us unless they check a certain set of boxes. So for us, we look for underdog clubs, low downside risk. We look for clubs that have high potential to be exported, so that we can, use our marketing skills to actually, drive incremental value, whether it's through revenue or media, merchandising, whatever it might be. We look for clubs that have somewhat of an appeal from a travel standpoint. So these are we have like a set of 5 or 6 of these boxes, and we probably see now, I don't know, 20 or 30 deals a month, and we just go right to those boxes. And, if they're not checking those boxes, as attractive as the clubs can be, and there are so many deals where I'm like, shit, like we're really tempted to do this deal. If they don't check those boxes, we got to stay true to what has gotten us to this point. And if they don't check those boxes, we just don't do them.
Boom. I love that.
I think that's a good ending.
Yeah, it's a great ending.
Yeah, Matt, again, thank you for being here, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll do it with wine and soccer next time. Guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. We got amazing guests, obviously, great things to talk about. We will see you soon, and thanks for being a part of this. Bye.
Judd, Matt, thanks. Craig, when you come to New York again?
Oh man, when I come out there, we're going crazy.
Watch party.
That's staying in here.
I appreciate you guys. All
Thanks,
right,
guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to GTM Unfiltered. To hear our innovative insights and strategies, visit gtmunfiltered.com. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time.